Well, good afternoon there, folks, and welcome to another episode of 162 Times, your daily baseball recap and preview show. I'm your host, Daniel Turner. It is episode 107 tonight, and we will feature a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's Monday, so we're going to talk about Sunday. Obviously, there was a game that was played. There were games played elsewhere in the major leagues. In fact, the Mariners wrapped up a 3-game series from Chicago, where they were taking on the White Sox of the American League, and they won the first 2 games. So we'll talk to you about the third game of that series. We will then preview the matchup that Seattle is just underway, I believe. They have gone down to, or over to Boston, Massachusetts, to play the Red Sox. So they're having a Sox road trip, which is always fun to say. And so we'll preview that series and, of course, the first game. We've also got a little bit of trade news to bring you. The Mariners made another trade, and we will talk a bit about the history of the Chicago White Sox, as we like to do that when the Mariners are on the road and visiting another club. So let's get right into it. Good news: on Saturday, the Mariners beat the White Sox 6-3, and on Sunday they did it again, beating the White Sox 6-3. The win takes the Mariners to 56-51, second in the American League West by 1/100th of a percentage point behind Houston. And the White Sox dropped to 27-81. Wow. 5th in the American League Central, obviously. 8 hits for the Mariners, 7 hits for the White Sox. No errors for the Mariners, 2 errors for the White Sox. 6-3 your final. Bryce Miller, starting pitcher for the Mariners, got his 8th win of the year. He's now 8-7, 3.46 ERA. Garrett Crochet took the loss for the White Sox, 6-8, 3.23 ERA. And Andres Munoz got his 18th save of the year, 1.28 ERA on the season. It sure does help to play the White Sox for a team's confidence and general well-being. Miller was good. 6 1/3, 7 hits, 3 runs, all of them earned, no walks, 6 Ks. He gave up 1 homer. He did all of that on 88 pitches. Crochet, on the other hand, only went 3 innings, the All-Star. 6 hits, 5 runs, 3 earned, 1 walk, 3 Ks, 1 homer given up, and he threw 64 pitches in just 3 innings, so that's not very good. Mariners' bullpen was solid, no hits or runs given up by any of them. It was Austin Voth, 2/3 of an inning, Jimmy Garcia, 1 inning, and Munoz, 1 inning. Voth struck out 1 guy, Munoz walked 1 guy, otherwise there were zeros on the score sheet. So 7 Ks overall for Mariners pitching, and the White Sox struck out 9 Mariners. It was Cool and Brebbia out of the bullpen for the White Sox. Cool did 5 innings in relief, 2 hits, 1 run. It was earned, 2 walks, 4 Ks. Brebbia, 1 walk, 2 Ks in an inning of work. All right, talking about the scoring, and then we'll look at how the lineup did. So top of 1, it was Cal Raleigh with Randy Arozarena on base after Randy chopped a little squibber, swinging bunt, you might call it. Anyway, man on, Cal knocks it out, 22nd of the year, 2-0 Mariners at that point. Top 2, Leo Rivas, shortstop last night. He grounded into a force out, but it allowed Dylan Moore to score. 3-0 Seattle after 2. Then top 3, Mitch Haniger reached on a fielding error by third baseman Paul DeJong, went right through him. He heard the boo birds. It allowed Polanco and Dylan Moore to score. 5-0 Seattle at that point. Bottom of 3, Tommy Pham, who in his photo is wearing a Cardinals cap and who was just traded back to the Cardinals today, singled on a ground ball to right fielder Mitch Haniger, which scored Corey Lee, 5-1. Then top 4, Cal Raleigh singled, scoring Victor Robles, 6-1. And Paul DeJong, his 18th homer of the year with Andrew Benintendi on base, made it a 6-3 final with a bottom of 7 shot. But they didn't really threaten. The White Sox didn't. So another good night for Robles. He was 2 for 5 with a run. Arozarena was 2 for 4 with a run. Raleigh was 2 for 5 with a run and 3 ribbies. Polanco was 1 for 4 with a run. Mitch Garver was 0 for 5, struck out thrice. Dylan Moore was 1 for 4 with 2 runs. Haniger and Locklear, who was then replaced by Vosler, got no hits, but they only struck out once apiece. And Rivas was 0 for 4, but he did have an RBI. So, interesting night in the lineup, but that's how it goes. So, as we talked about recently, the Mariners made a splash by trading for Randy Arozarena and Jimmy Garcia. Today they made another fairly sizable deal, so they traded with Toronto again and got third baseman Justin Turner, a professional hitter, and cash in exchange for Double-A outfielder R.J. Schreck, the 29th ranked prospect in the Mariners organization. And they also finally traded Ty France to Cincinnati, along with some cash in exchange for catcher Andrew Salcedo, not to be confused with Saucedo. Salcedo. So 2 moves of import for the Mariners there. Salcedo probably won't make the team, but, finding a home for Ty France is a good thing to do for a guy who was a solid player for the Mariners for quite some time. All right, let's talk about the scores quickly, and then we'll preview the upcoming series, and then we will do the Sunday on a Monday stuff. So the scores from around baseball on Saturday, the Blue Jays did sweep at the end of the day the Rangers 7-3, so that's good for the Mariners. The Padres beat the Orioles 9-4. Not sure what's going on in Baltimore. It's not too relevant for the M's just yet. The Rays keep winning despite selling their whole team 4-0 over Cincinnati. Braves over the Mets 4-0. That's a National League matchup that does not impact the Mariners' playoff hopes. My goodness, I'm a dummy. I'm reading you guys the Sunday scores. Okay, scratch all of that. All of that. Here come the Sunday scores, okay? Jeez. Rays over the Reds 2-1. Not great. Orioles over the Padres 8-6. Fine. Guardians over the Phillies 4-3. Guardians are too far ahead of the Mariners for it to matter. And the Blue Jays did sweep the Rangers with a 7-3 victory on Sunday. Interesting. Twins over the Tigers 5-0. Doesn't help the Mariners in the wild card chase. Mets over the Braves 9-2. National League, no impact. Cubbies over the Royals 7-3. That helps. Keeps the Royals within striking range of the Mariners. And the Dodgers beat the Astros, thank you very much, 6-2. So the Mariners gained a game on the Astros, and that's why they're only 1/100th of a percentage point behind the Astros in the division. Thus, no games back in the division, yet still in second place. Brewers over the Marlins in the National League 6-2. Cards over the Nationals in that same National League 4-3. Giants over the Rockies 5-4. Angels over the Athletics 8-6. Pirates over the Diamondbacks 6-5. And the Yankees beat the Red Sox again 8-2. So good news for the Mariners as their 2 closest rivals in the wild card, the Royals and the Red Sox, both lost while the Mariners won. So this is very, very good. All right, before we shift our attention entirely to Fenway Park in Boston, let's just quickly talk a little bit about the White Sox, who obviously suck this year, but have played baseball in Chicago for quite some time, and who, in my opinion, are kind of a fun franchise. So they started life, believe it or not, in the Western League, which was a precursor to the American League, as a team called the Sioux City Cornhuskers in 1894. Owner Charles Comiskey then moved the team to St. Paul, where they became the St. Paul Saints from 1895 to 1899. Now, Comiskey's important because he owned the White Sox up until the late 1930s, and he built the ballpark that the White Sox played in for a long time. Interesting thing about the St. Paul Saints is the guy who eventually consolidated control of ownership over the White Sox was a man named Bill Veeck, famous baseball promoter. He had one leg. He was a legend in baseball circles. By all accounts, a very interesting, fun guy. Now, he had a son. I think it was Pete Veeck, who tried to help his dad with promotions and eventually went to a few other major league teams, had some success as an owner, sort of promoter of baseball, like really a baseball promoter. But the fun thing is, later in his life, he ended up owning and refurbishing and revitalizing the minor league St. Paul Saints. So it all kind of comes full circle. There's a great movie on Netflix called The Saint of Second Chances or something like that, and it's all about Bill Veeck's son. And the cool thing is, he is voiced and portrayed by Charlie Kelly from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, who is perfect for the role of Pete Veeck. And I apologize if I got the Pete part wrong, but anyway, I'm going to move on with my show. So after being the St. Paul Saints, they then moved to Chicago, and they were known as the Chicago White Stockings from 1900 to 1903. And then from 1904 to the present day, they've been known as the Chicago White Sox. Also just the Sox, the Chi Sox, the Southsiders, because they play on the south side of Chicago as opposed to the Cubs who play on the north side. The Pale Hose, hose another word for sock, white, synonym of pale. And the Black Sox, but only in 1919, because that's when gangster Arnold Rothstein paid 8 of the Chicago White Sox to throw the World Series in favor of the Cincinnati Red Stockings. And they were eventually caught, and everyone involved, except for Charles Comiskey, who was the owner at the time, was banned from baseball. And one of the factors in instigating the Black Sox scandal was the cheapness the frugality in extreme of Mr. Comiskey. But Comiskey did build Comiskey Park, and he ultimately got inducted into the Hall of Fame, which is, a little bit unfair considering Shoeless Joe Jackson never did, and he was probably more, anyway, I'm not going to get into that right this second, but I think you know that I'm right. So, history of ballparks that the Southsiders have played in. Well, back in Sioux City, they played at Lexington Park, then Southside Park, which was in Chicago from 1900 to 1910. Then they played from 1910 to 1990 in Comiskey Park, and with a brief sojourn in 1968 to 1969 where they played at Milwaukee County Stadium while Comiskey was being refurbished, I believe. That was about the time that Bill Veeck, he was owner, then he had to leave, then he had to come back. And then his son arranged like the Disco Demolition Night. If you've never seen this, you should see it. But it was this thing where they thought as a promotion they were going to blow up disco records. But it kind of turned into this weird like right-wing sort of, today we'd call it like sort of like a right-wing, almost like, it was kind of anti-black, anti-gay, because that was how disco was viewed. Anyway, wild scene, including Bill Veeck going out with his peg leg trying to get everyone to cool it, which didn't work. I think the White Sox had to forfeit the game, and he may have been forced to sell the team as a result of that. Anyway, they played at Comiskey from 1910 to 1990. Then they moved to what they now call Guaranteed Rate Field, which is a really nice ballpark, but it also used to be called U.S. Cellular Field. The White Sox have won 3 Major League titles, 1906, 1917, and 2005. So they've won 7 American League pennants, and a few division titles. They were quite good in the early 2000s. Paul Konerko, A.J. Przinsky, Scott Pudsednik, managed by Ozzie Guillen at the time, Jermaine Dye, Mark Burley. They had good teams. They suck this year. They're historically bad this year. Anyway, that's it. We'll do that again for the Red Sox, although it's pretty easy. They have always played at Fenway. So let's move on to talk about a quick preview of the Red Sox matchup. So in Game 1, it's a 3-game series, by the way. So in Game 1, we've got Nick Pivetta on the hill for the home team, Boston Red Sox. And he will be going up against Logan Gilbert for the Mariners. So Gilbert, as you know, one of my favorite players, probably the best starting pitcher in the American League this year, despite his win-loss record. He's 6-6, 2.69 ERA, 22 starts, 140 innings pitched, 135 strikeouts, and a .85 WHIP. Logan. He's going up against Nick Pivetta. Not at all a bad pitcher. 4-7 this year, 4.40 ERA, 17 starts, 86 innings, 105 strikeouts, 1.15 WHIP. Actually, maybe he's not that great of a pitcher. But he's born in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, so we like a Canadian on this show. I did not realize that. Anyway, all the talent in Canada for baseball comes from British Columbia. You can take that to the bank. All right, Mariners are leading off tonight. It'll be Robles in center, Arozarena in left, Raleigh at catcher, Polanco batting second, Raley in right field, Dylan Moore shortstop, Jason Vosler first base, Mitch Haniger DH, Josh Rojas at third. Be interesting to see how Vosler plays at first, and glad to see Luke Raley in the 5-hole in that order. All right, on the Red Sox side, it's Jarren Duran, all-star, playing center field, leading off. It'll be Abreu, right field, batting second. Masahiro Yoshida, Masa Yoshida, DHing, batting third. Rafael Devers, third base, cleaning up. Tyler O'Neill, left field, fifth. He's also Canadian. Dominic Smith will be the first baseman, batting sixth. Connor Wong will catch. Hamilton will play second base, and Rafaela will be shortstop and batting ninth. So, should be a good game between these two teams, and really crucial for the wild card standings. Going into it, Seattle's 56-51, and Boston is 55-49. So very similar records. All right, now before we do actually sign off, it is Sunday, so it's time to Sunday on a Monday this stuff, or it's Monday, so it's time to talk about that. We're going to do the divisions. We're going to recap the divisions, see where things stand, including the wild card. So let's start with the Hogs in the American League East, and for the second week in a row, the Baltimore Orioles are leading that division. They're 63-43, plus 87 on the run differential, 5-5 in their last 10. Followed closely by the New York Yankees, 62-45. That's a game and a half back of Baltimore. 4.5 up in the wild card for the Yanks. They have 106 runs to the better on the differential. The Boston Red Sox are in third place, 7 back of the Orioles in the division. 1 game back in the wild card. They're 55 and 49 plus 22. The Tampa Rays are third place in the division, 54 and 52. 9 games back in the division, but 3 back only in the wild card, though they do have a minus 50 run differential, and they've sold their team. So I expect them to start to peter off, but you never know. Jays are bringing up the rear, 49 and 57, 14 games back in the division, 8 games back in the wild card. Forget about it. American League Central. Cleveland continues to lead, 63 and 42. They are 4.5 games up on Minnesota, who's 58 and 46. Minnesota is also 2 games up in the wild card. Kansas City is in third place, 57 and 49 on the year, 6.5 back at Cleveland in the division, and sitting in the third American League wild card spot. Cleveland has a plus 72 differential, Kansas City a plus 71, and Minnesota a plus 51. Fourth place in the division are the Detroit Tigers, 52 and 55 they are, 12 games back in the division, 5.5 back in the wild card, not totally out of it, minus 2 run differential. I'm told, though, that they are sellers at the deadline, so they might be giving up. And the White Sox round things out, minus 218 run differential, 27 and 81, as we know. That is 37.5 games back of the division-leading Guardians, by the way. And they've lost 14 in a row for the second time this year that they've lost 2 straight weeks of games in a row. And interestingly, that was pointed out that even if they hadn't had either of those losing streaks, their record would still be the worst in baseball and possibly in their franchise's history. I can't remember which it was. All right, moving on to the American League West, as you were all waiting for. So that is led by the hated Houston Astros, 55 and 50 they are, which is a winning percentage of .524. They're 5-5 in their last 10, and they're plus 51 on the differential. Behind them are the Seattle Mariners, who are 56 and 51, which is a winning percentage of 5.23. That makes them even on games, but Houston's ahead on percentage. Seattle's also a game and a half back in the wild card. So Boston's a game back of Kansas City. Seattle's a game and a half back at Kansas City. The series they're playing this week, hugely important. Seattle has won 3 in a row, courtesy of that sweep, but they're 4 and 6 in their last 10 because they play the Angels so much and they can't beat them. They also have a plus 25 run differential. Third place, Texas, 51 and 55. 4.5 back in the division, 6 back in the wild card. They've lost 3 in a row thanks to the Blue Jays, and their run differential is even at 0. LA Angels, 46 and 60. Oakland, 44 and 64. 11 and 14 games back, respectively, in the wild card. They're out of it. Minus 95 for the Angels, minus 65 for the A's. Over in the National League, Phillies, still the best team in baseball, 65 and 40, plus 114 run differential. They got an 8.5 game lead on the Braves in the division. The Braves in second place are 56 and 48, a game and a half up in the wild card, and they have a 56-plus run differential. The Mets have turned things around, 55 and 50, 10 games back in the division, but sitting in the wild card spot in the National League with a plus 16 run differential as well. The Nationals are 6.5 back in the wild card, 16.5 back in the division at 49 and 57. It's slipping away for them. They're minus 35 on the differential. And the Marlins stink, 39 and 67, 26.5 back in the division, minus 142 on the differential. Milwaukee continues to lead the Central, 60 and 45 they are, plus 80 on the differential. They got a 6-game lead on the Cardinals. They got it as close as about 4.5 last week, I think it was. So the Cardinals are in second, 54 and 51, 6 games back in the division, as mentioned, 1 game back in the wild card. The Pirates are in third place, 53 and 52, 7 back in the division, 2 back in the wild card, still very much in it. St. Louis has a minus 48 run differential, which is an outlier. Pittsburgh's more normal at minus 10. Cubbies, 5 games back in the wild card at 51 and 56. They're not totally donezo, but they're selling at the break, so you'd expect them to kind of be tailing off. They're minus 7 on the differential, and the Reds are last in the division, but also only 5 games back, 50 and 55, with a plus 35 run differential, which is one of the best run differentials in the National League. Very interesting, right? All right, finally, the National League West. The Dodgers, 63 and 44. They have a 6.5 game lead on the Padres. They have a plus 94 run differential. They're 7 and 3 in their last 10. They're very good. The Padres are at 57 and 51. They have a half game cushion in the wild card, so they're in a wild card spot right now. The Diamondbacks are in third place, 55 and 51, 7.5 back of the Dodgers, a half game back in the wild card. The Giants are in fourth in that division, 53 and 55, 3.5 back in the wild card, minus 16 on the differential. They haven't really ever gone away completely, despite never really being good this season. And the Rockies suck. They're last, 38 and 69. 25 games back in the division, minus 173 on the differential scale. So the most bizarre number of all these numbers is the fact that Cincinnati's dead last in their division with a plus 35 run differential, and St. Louis is second in that division with a minus 48 run differential. Almost feels like someone added the math up wrong. Worst team by a mile, Chicago White Sox. Best team, followed closely by Baltimore, are the Phils. And in terms of who people are playing next, well, as we know, Seattle's at Boston, Texas is at St. Louis, and Houston is hosting Pittsburgh. So we're obviously cheering for Pittsburgh. Kansas City is at the Chicago White Sox. So White Sox are a little better at home, but the Mariners just swept them at home. The Twins are at the Mets. Both teams fighting for playoff spots. That should be a good series. And the Guardians are at Detroit. So that's not a walk in the park for them either. Yankees are at Philly. That's tough. And Tampa's hosting Miami in a Florida series. Not so tough. And the Jays are at Baltimore, probably about to get crushed. So, interesting matchups. I don't think this week necessarily favors Seattle, but they have an opportunity in the fact that they're playing a rival, which we like. All right, so that was a bit of a longer show as usual for this day of the week, but we hope you enjoy it, and we'll catch up with you tomorrow. Thanks a lot.